What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I'm your host, EJ Holland. Today, we're going to be talking about quite a bit. Michigan picked up its first five-star commitment in 3 cycles since 2022 when Will Johnson gave his verbal pledge to the Wolverines. Obviously, a lot going on. It's Michigan State week, so big recruiting weekend for the Wolverines during a must-win game. Obviously, I'll be answering all of your questions. Before we do that, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. Liking us gets us in front of other Michigan fans, gets me in front of other Michigan fans, so we can continue to participate in the chat box and have a lot of discussion. So again, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get notifications every time we drop a new video. So, for example, yesterday when Andrew Babalola committed, we had a video up right away. You would have gotten that alert. So make sure to subscribe to our channel as well. That is completely free. And also subscribe to thewolverine.com. Here's our special offer. It's $1, 2 months. Use the promo code UM1. That gets you insider recruiting information. If you don't get enough from the YouTube channel or you just like what you hear here on the show, you can subscribe to thewolverine.com. $1 for 2 months. Use the promo code UM1. A lot of intel going into the big recruiting weekend. And plus, we have great team coverage, basketball transfer portal, and all that good stuff over at thewolverine.com. All right, enough of the promos. Let's go ahead and get to the questions. And we already have quite a few questions. So if you do want to skip ahead in the line, you can click that super chat button. It's the little dollar symbol that allows you to skip the line. It also gives me money to go to my travel budget so I can continue to see top Michigan recruits from around the country and even fix my blinds. As you can see, I kind of fix them. But let's go ahead and get with the questions. Mick Mutton. EJ, do you think the recent play on the field will have an impact on 2026 recruits or on keeping recruits like Andrew Olesh, Andrew Marsh, and Brady Hart? Yeah, I think a lot of people are quick to point to teams that have struggled on the field in the past, but have continued to have some recruiting results. And a lot of those schools, like let's say South Carolina, for example, they have the NIL backing, right? Or Miami up until this year, like they had the NIL backing, which Michigan doesn't have the luxury of having. So, if you don't have bags and you're not producing wins on the field, that's kind of a tough sell for recruiting. However, Sherrone Moore did pick up a big win in Andrew Babalola last night. Michigan is still a blue blood program, the winningest program in all of college football. It's still very appealing to a lot of prospects. You saw Brady Hart commit. Again, here's Babalola. I mean, top 20 recruit in the country. And something that Babalola told me about why he committed, because I straight up asked him, I was like, do you think, why didn't the play on the field affect your decision, right? You committed while Michigan is 4-3 and you've already delayed so many times. What was another delay going to do, really? But, he was pretty straightforward with me. And he just said, look, I believe in Sherrone Moore. I believe in Grant Newsome. I believe in the vision of this program. So I think some recruits that have been really high on Michigan still feel that way, and not just guys that are commits, but I think targets that have visited a couple of times, guys that got to be around Sherrone Moore and the staff during the barbecue at the big house, guys that have come in, early in the season. I think there's still a belief in Sherrone Moore, even though the results aren't, great. But at the same time, you still have to win on the field. And I think this weekend is crucial. I mean, if you lose to Michigan State, it could spiral fast with Oregon and Ohio State and even Indiana now still on the schedule. So you have to win this game, especially with quite a few guys on campus. And, in terms of guys in the class, I think it's situational. Like for Andrew Olesh, he's still looking around. He might visit Oregon this weekend. He's set to visit Penn State next weekend. I think for him, it's just seeing a little bit more out of the offense, making sure Michigan avoids any mess with the NCAA. for Andrew Marsh, it's, again, the offense. You still have teams like Colorado and Washington pushing for him. And, for Brady, I think he's had a bit of concern with the offense, but I talked to him the other day and he's still fully locked in and not overly concerned. And he knows he'll have an opportunity to come in and change the offense and compete right away. So I think it's just kind of case by case. And, again, this start isn't great, but I think, they have to win on Saturday. If they win on Saturday, I think things will be okay. And you can still sell kind of that newness of Sherrone Moore, along with everything else that still makes Michigan a great program, both on and off the field. Ben Ricketts says, how do you think Michigan will finish with offensive line commitment? So, they landed Andrew Babalola. They already had Avery Gatch, who's more of a guard, and Caden Strayhorn, who projects as a center. So that's 3 offensive linemen. That was the number they were originally planning to take. Now, they could take 4. I've been told that they are looking at maybe adding a 4th offensive lineman, which would be smart. The offensive line room hasn't been amazing. And, the previous classes outside of last cycle were pretty small. So if you go back to like 23 and 22, those offensive line classes were fairly small. So I think they could add another one. I would like to see them add a tackle. They recently offered Nolan Davenport, who's committed to Wisconsin. They're evaluating senior film. So right now there aren't a lot of names out there, but they are looking at a potential, 4-man class with one more addition. Ben Ricketts says, I know Michigan took Adam Samaha 2 years ago, but do you think Michigan can still flip Scott Starsick from Iowa? Yeah, I still think it's a possibility. He was on campus last month. So, I thought Michigan was trending well after that visit. He's gone really, really quiet, so it's tough to tell. But yeah, I still think that's definitely a flip possibility for the Wolverines. Daniel Rebane says, hey, EJ, hope all is well with you and the family. I don't know if you covered JUCO recruiting, but is there any word if we would go that path for any potential needs this cycle? Michigan just doesn't recruit JUCO guys. I don't think they've landed a JUCO guy since I've covered Michigan. So, I think it's all portal. And, I think for JUCO guys, it's tough to get into Michigan with the, rigorous transfer process and, the academic requirements and things of that nature. So JUCOs usually aren't an option for Michigan. Daniel back with another one. He says, I saw some clips of CJ Sadler at corner against Detroit King from this weekend and noticed that he said he'd like to play both ways in college. Is Michigan pitching that at all to him? Yeah, with CJ, he's such a dynamic athlete. I think he's a little bit on the shorter side for corner, but he can definitely play it. I've seen him play corner both in pads and on the 7-on-7 circuit. And he's been fantastic. And I think he could play it, but again, I think he's a little bit on the short side and he'd best be utilized on the offensive side of the ball. He's just so explosive and dynamic with the ball in his hands. I think he can be Tavon Austin-esque. He's that explosive and electric, and you can line him up in the slot, put him in the backfield, have him return kicks and punts. He's, that guy that I feel like Michigan hasn't found a way to necessarily utilize. Like AJ Henning, he's kind of a better version of an AJ Henning. But I think, if you use him the right way, like Tavon Austin was used the right way, right? I think you can have, just an absolute dangerous weapon that you can use on offense. So, I don't think they've talked to him too much about corner. Ron Bellamy is leading the recruitment there. They really like him as a wide receiver. So that's kind of where things stand with CJ. McMutton says, of the top running backs in the 2026 recruiting class, which one would you take if you could pick any and why? Well, Michigan does want to take 2 backs in 2026. I think that's going to be the plan moving forward. But if I just had to pick one, my favorite guy, it's Savion Hyder. Obviously, he's the guy that I'm most familiar with. I really like Javian Osborne as well. I think Javian is an elite back. I think you could make the case for Javian over Savion. But I've just liked what I've seen from Savion. Like I said, I'm more familiar with him. I've seen him in person many times. I just saw him in game a few weeks ago. And he's the total package. He's a tough runner between the tackles. He's electric after he breaks that first level. He can be dynamic in the passing game as a receiver out of the backfield or lined up in the slot. I think he, can just be that every down back for a program like Michigan and just be super successful in this offense. So, Savion Hyder, I think, is that guy. He's already formed a good relationship with Brady Hart. He's had a long-standing relationship with running backs coach Tony Alford. I think he kind of fits that Michigan culture as well. He's a quiet, little country kid. Likes to hang out at gas stations is what he told me is his hobby. So, he kind of just stays low key. So, yeah, I think Savion Hyder would be my pick. Daniel Rebane says, if the staff can't flip any big names on their board, do you think they focus on Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng, retaining commits, and then turn to Dotson, Graham, and other in-state guys, or find new flip targets? And I think it's dependent on position. For linebacker, they are still focused on Wusu-Boateng, obviously, but they are, looking at some of the more underrated flip targets. Cameron White is coming in for a visit for the game against Oregon. He's committed to UCF. Cole Sullivan's teammate just got an offer, former teammate just got an offer. So they're looking at some other linebackers as well. But yeah, they're going to be all in on Wusu-Boateng no matter what. He's not making a decision until closer to signing day anyway. If you're talking about DBs, I think the priorities are clear there. Grayson Littleton, Brandon Finney, Donovan Starr, Adonis Curry. They're still trying with all of those guys, but if they start feeling pessimistic about those guys, like, Donovan Starr canceled his visit. There hasn't been much movement with Adonis Curry. Brandon Finney just got a prediction for Penn State. I think that they could push more for Alex Graham and Elijah Dotson. And they're working on several potential flips along the defensive line. Like I said, they'd like to add another offensive lineman. They'd like to add another wide receiver. So there's still room for growth in this class for sure. John A. Schultz says, if Michigan fires Kirk Campbell this offseason, or at least demotes him to just quarterback coach, how will that impact Carter and Brady? If they fire Campbell, this offseason, Carter will have already signed. So I'm not sure it really impacts him very much. With Brady, I think it would hurt. I think he would stay committed to Michigan, but he would kind of evaluate things and look at who they bring in. If they demote him to quarterback coach, I don't think it would have much of an impact at all if he's on staff. I don't think it would affect Brady, regardless if he's demoted. So we'll just have to see. I think it's, all kind of just speculation right now. I think Kirk Campbell has done a really nice job on the recruiting trail. Obviously, he inherited a really bad quarterback room. He didn't recruit any of these guys, which I feel like people don't really realize. None of these quarterbacks in the quarterback room were Kirk Campbell recruits, not even Jaden Davis. He came in the last couple of months of the Jaden Davis recruitment. So, Carter is his first real land. Brady, is his second real land. So I don't know. We'll see, what happens with Kirk Campbell. I like Kirk Campbell, good guy. Like I said, he really tries hard at recruiting. He's had some results. So, I'd like to see him stay on staff. I get you have to do more than just recruit, and you have to have success on the field. So we'll see. Maybe if he, stays on as quarterbacks coach / co-offensive coordinator or something like that, we'll see. But, all of it's kind of speculation right now. John A. Schultz says, do you think teams should keep coaches simply because of potential recruits? It seems to me having the right coach is far more important. In this kind of day and age, especially with signing day getting moved up to December 4th, it doesn't really impact the current class. Like I said, let's hypothetically say Michigan did want to part ways with Kirk Campbell. Carter Smith will already be signed. Signing day is December 4th. I get they can get out of their NLIs and stuff, but that usually doesn't happen unless the head coach leaves. So I don't think it really has, a big impact at all. Tyson Smith says, will Michigan flip Brandon Finney? Chad put in a Penn State pick. Yeah, I think Michigan is still in it. I talked to a source close to the program last night, and they're still optimistic about their chances. I think he's definitely trending away from Oregon. I don't believe he ends up at Oregon. I think Penn State built up a lot of momentum on the visit. Again, dialogue with Michigan has still been really good. There's a reason for the staff to feel optimistic. At the same time, his visit to Michigan isn't until November 23rd. That's a full-on month from now. So Michigan has to kind of survive this Penn State flurry and make sure he actually makes it to campus for that November 23rd date without committing to the Nittany Lions. But his high school, McDonough, has a lot of ties to Penn State. A lot of kids have ended up there, and it is really close to home. Relatively, he doesn't have to get on a plane. He can just make the drive up to Happy Valley from the Baltimore area. So, yeah, I think Penn State definitely has momentum right now. We'll see how things shake out with Michigan. But again, there's still positive dialogue. The official visit is still set, but they absolutely have to make sure he does make it to campus. Tyson Smith says, are we getting Bryce Underwood? Obviously, that's been a really hot topic, and I've just said it like this. Right now, there's nothing to really report until Bryce Underwood makes it to campus, until Sherrone Moore goes by his high school, until, we see Joe Sloan, LSU's offensive coordinator, leave that program. If that happens, he's gotten some rumors about the East Carolina head coaching job. If any of that type of stuff happens, I will gladly report on Bryce Underwood. All of that right now is just speculation. And from talking to those close to the program, they'd rather keep it under wraps. I don't think the program's super happy of all the publicity and hype, because it doesn't allow Michigan, which is already a really cautious NIL school, to work behind the scenes. Like, if you're a Michigan fan or a Michigan reporter and you're hyping up Bryce Underwood all over social media and stuff, and you saw he even put a response out with some laughing emojis, you're just hurting Michigan's attempts to actually get him. Like, you're being detrimental to Michigan's efforts here, just because, if they were to get Bryce Underwood, it would have to be something where everything would have to line up. One of those things would have to happen. Like, they'd have to get him on campus, or Moore would have to visit him, or Sloan would be a big one if Sloan were to leave LSU. They obviously don't want to upset Carter Smith or Brady Hart. They love those guys for obvious reasons. They recruited them and landed them for a reason. So there are just kind of a lot of moving parts here. And like I said, if I'm not going to sit here and deny that Michigan isn't talking to Bryce Underwood, I would feel comfortable saying they are. But at the same time, there has been no, extreme movement like the internet has kind of taken and run off with. And like I said, I don't think Michigan is all that thrilled that it's getting as much publicity as it is. Like, again, Michigan would have to go against its nature and put together some extreme NIL package, which they never have done before. And if they do, Bryce Underwood is the recruit that's worth doing it for. But I think it's better done in silence as opposed to out in the open. The more out in the open it is, I feel like the worse it is for Michigan. Tyson Smith says, tell us 3 things we don't know about you. 3 things that you don't know about me. I don't know. That's a weird question. 3 things you don't know about me. 1, a lot of people say my nose is crooked. It is crooked. I actually broke my nose my senior year playing football in a really weird, incident, I guess. Like, the other team threw a bubble and I was an edge, and I went to tackle this little slot receiver, and his arm was so tiny it went through my face mask, and he elbowed me, and I broke my nose. So that's why my nose is crooked. And I also have a crooked smile, so just parlaying that sort of, because I still have a baby tooth. Like, the adult tooth just grew into the gum, so I still have a baby tooth. What would be the 3rd thing that you guys don't know about me? I feel like I share a lot with you guys, so I don't know if there's a 3rd thing that that you guys don't really know a lot about me. I'm not sure. I mean, let's see. I guess I didn't leave. I'm trying to just look around my room. I guess I didn't leave the state of Texas until I was 21. So a lot of people always ask me, like, if you were so happy in Texas, or you like the Texas beat so much, why did you leave? It's mostly because I was stuck in Texas my whole life and never got to leave. So I always wanted to do that. I had only been on a plane one time before that, and it was from my hometown to Dallas. So I still hadn't left Texas. So the first 21 years of my life, I got on a plane once, and then the last 12, I've been on a plane, like it feels like 500 times at this point. NV Universe 7. EJ, I have a quick question. Mr. Michigan fan on 3. So shout out to NV Universe for subscribing to thewolverine.com. And he says, which prospect right now that Michigan has a legit shot at has the highest ceiling based off of what you've seen? Bryce Underwood is obvious, but is there another great one? I mean, Babalola has a really high ceiling. Like, the thing about Babalola that's really exciting is he has some really impressive film. And I know you said prospects, but he is obviously a commit. So I'm not sure if you meant target or not. But with Babalola, his film is so impressive right now. Like, you could look at his film and just grade him as a 5-star based off of that. But when you delve deeper into him as a recruit, you see the ceiling, the upside with him. This is a kid that's only played varsity football for 2 years. Like, this is his second year of varsity football. He's kind of new to football. He grew up playing basketball, and he played basketball at a high level on the AAU circuit. So that has, that background gives him really good feet, really good athleticism. I think he's just starting to figure out how to play the tackle position. He's naturally a physical kid. If you turn on that film, he's pancaking guys the first, X amount of plays. And I think with pass pro, it's probably, if you were to pick out a weakness for him, I think being a pass pro technician is probably his biggest weakness right now. But the dude's only played football for 2 years, and he has the feet, he has the athleticism. Somebody just has to teach him how to play tackle. And so he's coming to a great place to do that at the University of Michigan. So much like Brady Hart, who I've said, Brady has a high floor, but he also has a high ceiling. It's the same thing with Babalola. He already has a high floor. But once he puts it all together, man, and gets the right coaching, he's going to be really scary, and he has a high ceiling to go along with that high floor. So I think Babalola would be one. And if you're just strictly talking targets, I would say Brandon Finney, because he's that tall, long corner at 6'2", 185, but he also has the track speed, like legit track times. And he tested crazy at the Under Armour Baltimore camp. I think he had the second highest vertical, the best long jump or broad jump. He's a guy that checks a ton of boxes athletically and has a huge ceiling as well. So, Brandon would probably be the target I would go with. Daniel Rebane says, it's spooky season now. What's a scary movie that you might watch this time of year, if any? I really I'm a big horror film fan. I'm always entertained. Like, I was never scared of horror films. My parents always forced me to watch them as a kid. So I was scared as a kid. Like, as a kid, I was scared of Chucky, and I hated The Ring. I had like nightmares about The Ring forever. But which I recently rewatched. But as an adult, I just find them entertaining. I'm not scared of them at all. I love horror movies. Like, we watched the original Exorcist the other day, and my wife had never seen it, and she was like screaming, and I was just laughing the whole time. Like, I think some of them are funny. But as far as like good ones that are recent ones that I would recommend, if you haven't seen Veronica, I would recommend that. It is in Spanish, but obviously you can read the subtitles. Veronica would be one. Late Night with the Devil just came out and was really good. I enjoyed that one. And then what's another one that just came out that I saw? Long Legs with Nicolas Cage. Nick Cage is the GOAT, man. And his like transformation from being a terrible actor in terrible movies to this star indie film actor has been amazing to watch. So shout out to Nick Cage. Go watch Long Legs. It's pretty good. So those would be the ones that come to mind recently. I'm not a huge like slasher film fan. So I'm not a huge like, Freddy or Michael Myers or scream type of guy. But I enjoy just a good old indie horror film's usually my speed. Let's go with Devin Croyer, and he says, "What's the smoke on Underwood? Are we back in the running for him?" Sounds like his parents said the ball is rolling now for Michigan. Like I said, there's just nothing for me to really report right now, just because there hasn't been a lot of movement. Like I said, I mean, Underwood hasn't visited, Sherrone Moore hasn't visited him. I'm not going to sit here and deny that Michigan's not talking to him. They have had discussions with him. But until there's some legitimate movement and not just, the internet catching fire with it, I'm just going to sit back and not really report on it. And also, like I said earlier, it's detrimental to Michigan, which is, trying to do something they've never done before behind closed doors. And it's all just, all out on the internet, which isn't the best thing for them. Jared Smith says, "Do you think Andrew Olesh and Ivan Taylor likely stay, or are they leaning more towards flipping? Also, do we have a chance with Nathaniel Boateng still, or is he out of the cards?" Yeah, I mean, I think both Andrew Olesh and Ivan Taylor are, possibilities, obviously, to stay in the class. I think with Andrew Olesh, the things that let's start off with Ivan Taylor. Our producer pulled up that one first. So, I think with Ivan Taylor, his father really likes Alabama. He grew up around, his dad, who, for those of you that don't know, is Ike Taylor. So Ivan grew up around the Steelers and NFL training camps and just around an NFL team. And so Alabama is kind of run in a similar way. And that's why they've really been able to impress his dad and impress Ivan as well. At the same time, I think Ivan really values what Michigan can offer on and off the field, which is why he flipped from Notre Dame to begin with. So I think it's a close race there. I think we'll know even more about Ivan after he makes his visit this weekend. Then on the flip side of the coin with Andrew Olesh, I think, with him, he just wants to see a little bit more from the offense. Obviously, the offense has struggled here throwing the ball, and he is a receiving tight end. And I think it's a positive that Colston Loveland is still largely considered, one of, if not the best tight end in college football. And the other thing with Olesh is I think his family has been a little concerned about potential sanctions and postseason bans. And so I think that's being really pitched by other schools. But yeah, I think there's definitely a good chance they stay in the class, but we're closely watching other schools. With Ivan, it's straight up Alabama. With Olesh, it's more Penn State and Oregon. Alabama, got a visit from him, but they just flipped Marshall Pritchett from North Carolina. So I think Bama's kind of, trending away there. They already have 2 tight ends committed, but yeah, we'll see what happens with both. And, as far as Owusu Boateng, nothing's really changed there. Michigan's remaining in the mix, but Owusu Boateng's kind of taking his time with the process. He still has a visit left to Notre Dame. He still has a visit left to Texas. He's not deciding until closer to signing day, so it's kind of just wait and see with him. Kinetic 615 says, do we see any new interest in recruits because of Babalola? Does this commitment help solidify any recruits aside from Babalola and Marsh? Are there any other year one contributors in the class? I think Babalola's commitment is huge for obvious reasons, but I don't think he's a super vocal kid. I do think he'll try to help build the class with some of these remaining targets for sure. But, as an offensive lineman, which is in a premier position, and being more of a quiet kid, I'm not sure how much his commitment really had a huge impact. Usually I think Andrew Marsh's commitment, for example, probably had more of an impact because Marsh travels the country doing 7-on-7. He knows a lot of these recruits and things of that nature. He's a talkative kid. He's always on social media. And Babalola is kind of the opposite. So I'm not sure how big of an impact it'll have, but I think it's certainly, I think he'll certainly try. And I think it's certainly a positive that you can point to and say, hey, we just had a 5-star commit in the midst of some season struggles, and he believes in the program, and, let him tell you why he believes in the vision of Sherrone Moore. So I think it can help in that aspect. In terms of year one contributors, you obviously mentioned Babalola, Andrew Marsh. I mean, other guys that can contribute. I think Jasper Parker can get into the rotation at running back. I think, with Kalel and Donovan leaving, that's, a wide open competition. And Jasper's been having a fantastic senior season. So I would go with Jasper. And I think, when you have high floor guys in the secondary, like an Ivan Taylor, a Kainoa Winston. Those are the types of guys that can get on the field early as well. Chris Goodis says, EJ, no question. Just wanted to say thank you for the hard work and making this football season more enjoyable. Thank you, Chris. Borge Warner says, like and subscribe. Kinetic 615 says something about EJ. He hurts Notre Dame fans' feelings on the daily. You should go look at my mentions right now. They're very upset. Yeah, I did do the J. Cole reference with the crooked smile. Enlay Wu says if Michigan can get one guy from the 25 class committed or not, who would it be? If Michigan could get one guy from the 25 class, regardless if he was committed or not, who would it be? Bryce Underwood, I guess. But, if we don't want to talk about Bryce, then I would go with Shamari Earls. That one's kind of faded away. But I think he's a 5-star kid. He's the corner committed to Georgia. He would be my guy, especially with Michigan still having a need at that position. Jeff says, what game did I go to on Friday? So this past Friday, I was in the great state of Florida seeing Carter Smith. And the reason you probably didn't notice a ton of coverage is because it was a rough game for Carter Smith. He only had 82 yards passing. He had 49 yards rushing and a touchdown. They played against West Boca Raton, which is home to on 300 running back Javian Mallory, who's a top target for Michigan. But their defense was really, really good as well. They have Jaden Broadnax, who's a 4-star safety that's a top Michigan target as well. And they just dominated in the trenches. Carter was under pressure the entire time and just never had time to set his feet and throw. It was really disappointing to see. He even got knocked out of the game late. Like at that point, I was like, just take him out. So yeah, it was a rough game. That's why I didn't have a ton of tweets out or anything like that. I mean, I did have some, like I you can go to my Twitter and see a few clips of Carter Smith. I'll upload some of his game highlights here on the YouTube channel. So make sure to like and subscribe. But yeah, that was the game I was at. It was just a rough one for Carter. Daniel Rebane says, other than the in-state DBs, any other in-state flip targets we could see the staff look at? Not really. I think in-state is just kind of down this year, and it's down next year too. Like outside of Greg Patrick and CJ Sadler, there aren't a lot of needle movers. 27 is loaded in-state though. Enlay Wu says, what team did you root for when you were watching the Texas game at Michigan? Michigan, because I've been removed from the Texas beat for like 5 years at this point. So there were only like a very limited, like I want to say like 3 or 4 guys that I covered still on the Texas team. So, the majority of guys that I covered and built relationships were at Michigan. At Texas, that roster, I just wasn't really familiar with that many guys anymore because I've been removed from the Texas beat for a while. And I wasn't a Texas fan growing up. So, obviously I went with Michigan. Jeff says, who is the next commit? That's interesting. I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone's like super, super close right now. I could see one of the, I could see Alex Graham, for example, like with Michigan struggling with Donovan Starr and Finney maybe going to Penn State and not getting a lot of movement with Curry or Littleton. Like I could see them just flipping Alex Graham. I could see one of the under the radar defensive linemen committing, like Benny Patterson, who's committed to Cincinnati. He's visiting this weekend. Quante Gillians, who's committed to Syracuse. He's visiting this weekend. So, some of those guys could commit, 26. You could always have a guy pop. So we'll see. Jeff says, how do you feel about Jamar Browder? Yeah, he's another one. He's a 3-star wide receiver committed to NC State. He's coming in next weekend. I think Michigan's in a really good spot to flip him from NC State. The team to watch there, I'd actually be more concerned about this team than NC State, and that's Kentucky. Kentucky's been a thorn for Michigan on the recruiting trail, and they're set to get him in for an official visit as well, and they're really ramping things up. So it'll be interesting to see, how much Kentucky builds momentum with him. Josh Jackson says, how long until Babalola decommits? I don't think he's going to decommit unless, Michigan gets in a really dire situation. I think he passed up an NIL opportunity with Auburn to come to Michigan. So I think right now there's no reason to feel, worried. And I just don't get that. From talking to him yesterday, I just didn't get that sense with him. Like, I got it with Nate Marshall. I was pretty upfront with you guys, and I was like, Nate Marshall's going to flip at some point. I'm not sure I really feel that way about Babalola, but if Michigan does, start or continue to lose on the field, if they lose to Michigan State and just go on a losing streak, then, that's going to be something to watch. And like Wu says, which high school football team is the best right now in America? I don't know who we have number one, but I'm assuming it's modern day. I think there's just those handful of teams that are always at the top that are super teams, like, those high level private schools, whether it's modern day or St. John Bosco or IMG Academy. I don't think IMG Academy is up there for the one spot this year, but I think, modern day and St. John Bosco, they get the best talent in Southern California. So it's always tough to top them. Let's see. Jeff says there's a lot of prospects coming in this week. How bad will a Michigan State win hurt with recruiting? Yeah, I think it'll hurt, man. I was talking about that with Chris Ballas and the team guys earlier. If they lose to Michigan State, I do think that'll hurt, because you look at the rest of the schedule too. I mean, you lose to Michigan State, that's a winnable game. Then you have Oregon, you have Indiana. You have Oregon, you have a road game at Indiana, Northwestern's a winnable game, obviously, and then you close out at Ohio State. But what does that put you at? If you lose to Michigan State and your only other win is against Northwestern, that's a losing season, right? So, I think that that would be kind of rough there. Let's go ahead and go with, or we're actually out of time, so we're going to go rapid fire really fast. We're going to go Enlay Wu. He says, are we getting Jordan Young? I don't know, man. I was feeling kind of optimistic about Jordan Young a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't been feeling the same way, especially with him bringing up playing offense. Like, that's not something that's really been discussed with Michigan. Jeff says, who's your favorite recruit right now as far as personality? My favorite guy in the class right now, my favorite guy is Brady Hart, but he's not in the class right now. He's a 26. So out of the 25s, I'd probably have to say Eli Owens or Jalen Williams. I'm sure I'm missing somebody that's going to be upset. Dennis Tydek says, go Blue. Barry Eastbrush says, is there any real steam to Bryce Underwood? We talked about that earlier. It's best if it stays behind closed doors, and right now nothing really to report on that's concrete. Daniel Rebane says, where do you think Jasper Parker finishes in the rankings? And do you think the Louisiana State record for rushing TDs, or do you know the rushing record for touchdowns in the state of Louisiana? Feels like he could break that. I don't know what the record is, but yeah, it feels like he scores 4 touchdowns every week. On3 already moved him into the top 100. Into the top 200. But I think he could potentially, make an argument for top 100. I'm really, really excited to see him before the end of the season, which I am going to make it to New Orleans. I've said that many times, and each time the trip gets completely canceled by Spirit or my wife having something, or like it's just never worked out. I've been trying to go to New Orleans to see Jasper Parker for months on end. I've had 3 or 4 separate trips get completely canceled, but I just booked a new flight to New Orleans, so I am planning to be there. Dennis Tydek says, when does Jaden Davis play? Not this year. And Lei Wu says, how did we miss on Will Black, NIL? I'm not sure, because, Will Black is a Canadian, and, NIL is kind of weird with guys that are out of the country. I think that was probably the biggest miss of the cycle up until yesterday, when they made up for it by landing Andrew Babalola. And Jeff is the last one, and he says, what's the game this week? I want to see Jamar Browder. I think he can be special. What's the game for me this week? It's not Jamar Browder. I'll be seeing Ivan Taylor, so we'll have an update on whether or not he may flip to Bama. And okay, we have one last one. Enlay Wu says 27 seems loaded in state. 2 to 3 5-star potential. We get all of them. I think they have a chance to land a good amount of those, highly touted in-staters in 27. That's a special in-state class. And yeah, for everything Michigan recruiting, make sure to head over to thewolverine.com. We have that promo code running right now, $1, 2 months. Use it. Use that promo code UM1, especially this week as Michigan takes on Michigan State. Should be a fun week over on the site. Also, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, and we will see you next week.